Okay, a very warm welcome to you if you're joining us for the first time from this From Campus to Career series. My name is Paul Correa and I run Saitu Pro, which is a little outfit that's trying to get young people much more aware of what it's like in the job market. And today I'm really privileged to have a great friend of mine, Sami Lungati, who's going to take us through his experience of From Campus to Career, how it was starting right after he graduated. In fact, we can even go back to high school and sort of relive a few moments when things started to click for him on the direction he wanted to take. So stick around till the end. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. It's going to be a fun discussion. I've just very briefly given him an overview, but I'm sure we shall discover a lot of things as we go along. So welcome, Sami. Why don't you start by telling
Thank
us a
you.
little bit about yourself?
Great. Yes, I'm Lungati Olembo. I've been in the tech industry the past 15 or so years. Out of campus, I went to Strathmore University where I did a bachelor's in business and IT. I liked the mix. Initially, I was a bit skeptical about mixing business and IT, but when I think about it, it's almost like doing a computer science and a business degree at the same time. So kudos to them for just merging those two elements together. So yeah, 15 years of I started out as a developer. Actually, I started out as a support. I did mostly support in the beginning, um, where I'd help out in IT departments, just doing everything that you can get your hands on. And then eventually uh, headed into development, and then now I manage teams of developers.
So when you say IT department, you're referring to Strathmore.
I'm referring to Hashi Energy. That was my first
Okay, so you worked at
foray
Hashi
into
Energy as your first
at
employer.
Hashi Energy. Correct,
Okay,
correct. Yeah.
really, really cool. So,
And
go on, go on.
I was going to say it was a good experience, hitting the ground running. A lot of expectations from the employers, and but I think what they really did was they got me doing everything. I was really just hands on in everything, from networking to improving on the website, everywhere, anything you can do. Really, that was my first experience.
Okay, so thanks for that intro. Now, you studied Bachelor of Business and Information Technology at Strathmore. Now, Strathmore is one of the private universities, a really good university. But there are also the public universities, quite a number of private universities, and there are options to go and study abroad. Why did you end up at Strathmore? Like, what was the thing that moved the needle in the direction of Strathmore University?
Okay, good point. I'd say it was really just advice from my family. They knew that I really enjoyed working with computers, and the program at Strathmore was a business and IT course. And they figured that the blending of business skills plus IT skills would set me apart. And at that time, I think Strathmore was probably one of the first universities offering a BBIT outside of maybe Catholic University. Not very many universities had that program on offer. So yeah, figured it was a good idea to set me apart.
Okay, and now in retrospect, do you feel like the blending of business and IT particularly gave you an advantage?
I'd say it was good. I'd say the exposure to business skills, accounting, business finance, some of the units that we did at in campus were really good. They open your mind to the landscape beyond just your technical capabilities. They open your mind to how businesses work, which is a critical skill for anyone to have. So instead of going and doing a CPA or doing an accounting course, they blended the two, so that you leave university knowing how you could maybe just start your own business as soon as you graduate.
Now let's roll back to you talked about that you are interested in computers and IT. When did that begin? Can you tell us your story of at what point did IT or computers or technology feature in your mind as something that you thought you could build a career on?
Interesting. So my first foray into computers, my mom had a Pentium 2. This is way back in the day.
Pentium 2.
Correct. Where internet had a sound. You had a modem, and as soon as you got online, you could there was a physical, you could hear yourself getting online,
Yeah.
which is an interesting time. And my first experience was playing video games, really. And then I figured out that I really enjoyed just working with computers. I got really good at being able to use a command line, and I was fascinated by that. And I figured, if possible, I could turn it into a career. And then, of course, now much later in university, in high school, even there were books that I went through on programming, and it became more of a reality that you could actually program as a career. And then that's now why I decided to do um, computers. Yeah, in
Okay.
university. Yeah.
Okay. Really cool. So for that, so that was when like your first engagement with computers was like when you were in your mid-teens, early teens.
Early teens, probably around preteen, 12, 11, thereabouts, just playing on the computer, playing video games, and then just getting to have a lot of experience with the computer and trying to trying to learn more about that. Yeah.
And if you look back at that time, would you say that your peers were at about the same level in terms of their interest in computers? Were you ahead? Were you about the same? Were you behind the curve? Maybe something which spurred you on to maybe exert yourself a bit more? Like, where would you say, like, in terms of your awareness of computers in relation to your peers, was it something that
Mhm.
was common?
Good point. I think we had an advantage in that we had computers at home. And I figure a lot of my other peers would probably have to go to a cyber cafe, and then that many at that time. So definitely had an advantage in that we had computers at home, and I could use these computers on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I definitely had that sort of advantage, which then because I'm going home every day and interacting with these devices, I think that sort of just helped to yeah expose me to the technology.
Okay, so I think we've spent a good amount of time on your past and your nascent days in tech. And I think we have a very clear starting point. So you as a teenager starting out on the internet, the noisy modems. Now I'd like to sort of jump all the way to the present because what I'd like to do is then trace the path between that beginning and the present. But before we trace that path, I want you to tell us a little bit about what you do right now. Obviously, taking into account all the confidentiality around your work, I'm sure, like most technology contracts, you do have confidentiality clauses in your work, and we don't want to know the details of that. But if you could give us a general sense of what does your work involve now, all these years after you've developed these skills, through the different jobs you've worked at, the courses you've taken, the travels you've done. What do you do now? Can you help us paint a picture for us of what you do right now in your leadership role within your organization?
Great. So yes, I'm an engineering manager. I manage a team of developers, a blend of different skills. You have a front-end developer, a couple of front-end developers, back-end developers, um, DevOps engineers, and the idea is really just coordinating this team and allowing them to churn out good quality product. Um, so yeah, currently I work at Trigger Foods. I'm the supply chain engineering manager, and we build software products for the organization to help um, supply chain. Really, in our case, in our case, it's ensuring that goods are sourced, stored, and dispatched on time. And a lot of systems, a lot of business intricacies that go in there. But the idea is just allowing for all of these users, all of this entire organization to have a trail, a digital trail of products from source to customer. So we build the ecosystem that supports that.
Oh wow, that's good. But that sounds like it's
Yeah,
pretty involving. Like your business depends on you. Like if you guys make a mistake or you mess up, then that is a critical component of your business.
definitely, yeah. And for the longest time, we were defining ourselves as a tech-led organization because the tech is really a critical component in this entire mix. It's what gives the advantage, the competitive advantage that allows us to be a bit more different than your warehouse that's just getting goods in and supplying to your customers. We give them that advantage using our tech skills.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
I'm sure on a day-to-day, so the way technology changes so fast, like nobody knows what's going to be in tech in the next, well, I'm sure it's going to involve some form of AI in the next maybe 6 months or a year.
Mhm.
But aside from the actual technology trends, how do you how do you keep your team abreast of what's the cutting edge? Like, because it's very easy to be comfortable with what you know, and 1 year down the line, it turns out that there's a technology that's going to replace half of your team. How do
Mhm.
you keep abreast with technology? How do you grow? How do you foster that within your team?
Okay,
So
really
growth,
good
essentially
point.
growth.
Got you. So two things I can think of. One is we have a learning budget. So
Okay.
every individual has an amount allocated that allows them to subscribe to courses online and basically just upskill. They may decide to go a bit deeper in their stack, the backend, maybe DevOps stack, for example. They may decide to veer off into a different direction. The idea is just to give them a way to upskill themselves so that they remain valuable to the organization. But apart from that, we also plug into the ecosystem, if you like, the local tech scene. We have a couple of developer communities that we are plugged into. The PyCon, for instance, we've had a couple of our developers go and speak at these events, and that just helps to keep them plugged in to what's happening locally, what's happening even internationally through these exchanges. So those are the two sort of ideas that we have, ways that we have that allow our devs to upskill and to remain plugged into what's happening on the tech level and even on the business level.
Yeah, because one of the things I've learned over time is the best way to learn is to teach. Because when you teach, you realize that what you assumed you knew, or maybe you actually did know, but when you have to explain it, you somehow have to unpack what you know, and you
Correct.
realize, oh my goodness, I may have understood it, but maybe I memorized it, and now I have to figure out, what it actually, what actually involves. So
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
cool that you're involved in PyCon. What's your tech stack at work?
Great. So we mostly build microservices. So on the back end, we have microservices written in Go or Python or Kotlin. We have our Android apps written in both Kotlin and Java. Our front end is in React. Our entire cluster is on Google. Yeah, that's how our stack looks.
So in terms of the work that you do, and maybe typically in identifying the part of your job where you are experiencing growth, it's usually the part where you are most excited about, like the part that if you are allowed free reign on a day, like you're told, okay, today you're going to work anywhere on the code base that you want to work, what would you say is the part of the whole entire your responsibilities that brings you joy?
Oh wow, I like that. So for my background, I'm certified in Kubernetes. So I've always enjoyed sort of the background, sort of the behind the scenes. For a period, I worked at Angani in North Africa, cloud, local cloud providers in Kenya. And that experience, that exposure was really fun. I got to learn stuff that I feel a lot of developers don't really get to interact with. Building DNS and all these layers, internet services that are really cool. So for me, it was really just the backend side of things. Writing Python code was really fun. I loved how expressive I could get with Python. And then, of course, on the DevOps side, it's just knowing how things work that was really cool. In terms of debugging issues, just having that broader perspective of how things work beyond your once things are deployed and are on the cloud, and understanding how that service of yours will receive packets of information, and just that flow up the OSI level, OSI layer and back down. Being able to understand that, I think, was or being able to interact with that is really cool for me, and something I wish all developers would get to experience.
That's interesting because I'm confident that if you look back, because you've just mentioned right now the time you were at Angani and where you discovered this interest and passion and love for working on back end, and how that has ended up being sort of an enduring passion for you. So now let's now try and join the dots. So we have these two milestones or sort of markers in your life. Your start, where as a teenager you discovered technology and how it had just so much potential for you and that you could actually build a life on that. And then now where we are kind of actually see that you have built a life on top of technology. You're talking about things like Go and Python, microservices, which and Kubernetes, which we're not really going to delve into. And if you're watching this and you really want to learn those things, you can always check out, search for them on Google, ask ChatGPT or whatever is your favorite Gen AI. But now what I'd like to do is I'd like to now join those 2 points. So I'd like you to tell us, maybe just as an overview, like what are the companies you've worked in that have led to your current job? And then we'll now go into each of them in detail with a view to sort of pick them apart and ask the question, what was this in your progression to where you're headed to? Because I'm sure everything contributed towards your present role. So start off with
Got
an
you.
overview. So you started off, you said you mentioned Hashi Energy.
Yes,
And then what
Hashi
are your
Energy.
next jobs up to where you are?
Got you. So yeah, started out at Hashi Energy. This is around 2011 to 2012, right after
Mm.
university. Then after that, I was at Strathmore University. I was in the IT department at Strathmore. Uh, was spent maybe 3 years there before I then moved to Angani, and then later North Africa, and then finally at Trigger Foods, where I started out as a software developer and then became an engineering manager. Um, so
Just
I
before
guess,
you go into the details,
yeah,
which of those jobs have been the ones you've been at the longest?
okay, good point. I was at Strathmore for a while. I was at Strathmore for 3 years. I was at North Africa for I think 3 years as well. I was at Trigger. I'm currently at Trigger. I've been at Trigger for the past 6 years.
6 years, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's the one you've been at the longest. So it was Hashi,
correct. Yeah,
Strathmore, Node.
yeah. Hashi, Strathmore University, Angani, North Africa, and then Trigger Foods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's start from Hashi. Now,
Mhm,
what were you hired at Hashi for?
mhm,
And then, so for each of these, what I'd like us to do is to find out what were you hired for?
mhm,
What did it turn out that you did?
mhm, 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 mhm,
What did you learn about
mhm,
yourself?
mhm.
And and what what drew you away?
Okay,
So,
I like
what
it.
were you hired for?
Yeah.
What did you actually do?
Uh-huh.
What did you learn about
Uh-huh.
yourself?
Yeah.
And what drew you away?
Got you.
So I'll remind
Right.
this. I have them all written down, so don't
Yeah,
worry.
keep reminding
If
me.
I forget, because I don't want to get into the story. You'll realize you realize that certain memories will just start being thrown up. Okay, what were you hired
Got you.
for? At like what was the job description? And then what did you end
Sure.
up
So at
doing?
Hashi, got you. At Hashi, I was a systems developer. Straight out of campus.
It sounds
Um,
very high responsibility.
it sounded really high responsibility, but my the day job really just felt like I was an intern, and I think I did everything from wiring computers. You're plugging in Ethernet cables to get internet access to computers, to working on their websites and trying to add features. They had, I think, a Joomla website. The idea was just to add functionality to their website. Yeah, but really it was my first foray into tech at a corporate level. It was interesting, very, very stressful to be fair. And I think that's the thing that drew me away, just because there was not so much support straight out of campus. I think they had really the expectations versus the realities were just not very, very aligned. They had really high expectations in terms of what could be delivered, and yeah, that just ended up being a really stressful engagement. So that blew me away, and then I finally moved to Strathmore University,
Before we get to
where
Strathmore, I
I
really want to milk the
yeah
Hashi story in terms
okay
of your experience. Because remember, we are trying to understand this from campus to career.
mhm,
Because there are people who are listening to this right now and, you know, they just want to get any job. They're desperate. They've been probably broke. They were relying on maybe what's called the HELB, High Education Loans Board, that money that comes for all students. And
mhm,
they all of a sudden, maybe their parents are not financially able to support them in the city, but now they really need a job. They've stayed with their uncle or their aunt long enough, and now they're beginning to get eyes. They're being told you can't stay with us anymore, and they want to
mm,
get anything, and absolutely anything. So what I really want to get from so you've mentioned that yes, you had a lofty title,
mhm.
but the job turned out to be less lofty, more hands-on. What I'm
Very hands-on.
curious about is, did you have any colleagues, mentors, anyone who could guide you in that role? Or were you expected to bring all the skills? Here's a guy with BBIT, fresh from Strathmore. He should have all the knowledge. Throw the bugger in and let's see what comes out of this. Like, what was the
Correct. The latter.
the
That was the
latter?
expectation. It was really crazy because I was fresh from campus, and yeah, fine, you've touched some PHP, you've written some things here and there, but the expectation to build massive lofty systems, ooh, I really didn't have that much experience or exposure. Um, but at the end of the day, I think it was still it was still a good experience because I got to do everything really. It was one minute you are helping with the networking, the next minute you are working on the website. You really just hands on everywhere. So I think for anyone who's listening and trying to get maybe their first job, yes, the idea is really just get your hands in. Whatever job you can get, I think the idea is just start, and then hopefully once you're in the system, you can then strategize in terms of what your next steps are.
Yeah,
That's
and
my
that's
advice
a
to
really
people.
powerful strategy and or tactic. I think I like to make the distinction between strategy and tactics.
Mhm,
Get something, get anything that's moving,
yeah.
even if it'll be difficult at first. And most starting jobs will be that way, especially in our market where we don't have a lot of companies. Yes, we have a lot of small companies that are really trying to make ends meet, but we don't have a lot of Safaricoms and KCBs and such like. And therefore, getting whatever is available as a starting point gives you credibility. People look at your CV and they say, someone hired him and they gave him a job, and that was a starting job. At least he was able to learn something. Which brings me to another question about, I cannot imagine the imposter syndrome you bore at the time. Tell us a little bit about that experience at Hashi.
Mhm.
So everyone sees here's a systems engineer, he's going to solve everything.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, it was a lot it was a lot to be honest. And I think that's really what drew me away because I realized what they're expecting and what I could deliver. There was really no guidance in terms of trying to get you to grow to that expectation. So I figured I could grow much better in an environment where I have colleagues. So yeah, you're right. In terms of colleagues, having an environment where people can now mold you to that really high, lofty title, that's really critical. And I found that at Strathmore, for example. I worked in a full IT department, and there are different skills, and I was able to pick some skills here: Linux server administration, and Java programming. And because I had colleagues who were doing that work, I could then just sit. I mean, you can ask questions to your colleagues and learn from that experience and grow. And if you're stuck, you can find your way, or they can at least help you find your way and grow you from there. So that was a really, at least the difference between those two organizations or those two different experiences. At Strathmore, I had an environment where I could grow. And I think for any developer, that environment is really key. I don't think you should rush into just any job. True, I know we just said um,
Take something, take
jump in and
anything. Yeah.
take anything. But at the same time, you don't want to, especially if you are trying to become a developer, for instance, I think study an organization and see what structures they have in place. Um, and hopefully your experience will be a good experience. Yeah.
Now, here's a curious question for you. I'm trying to think. So I imagine that, and I always try to do this whenever I think about, jobs that I've had in the past, because you hired into this role when all you had was book knowledge. Like you knew what a, I don't know, what a server is, you knew what a command line is. Like you know one programming language versus another. You had some clues. And granted, like you'll never know everything 100%. In fact, in my experience, one of the things I've found is that the way knowledge grows, it's usually by having, first of all, a very broad set of general knowledge, but then a problem is able to select just a very tiny sliver of that knowledge, and that allows you then to go really deep into that particular
Correct.
thing. For example, if it's working with regular expressions, yeah, you can know that regular expressions exist and you know the
Mm-hmm.
general structure of a regular expression. But until you work on a project where you have to write regular expressions that extract, binary data from a file,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
you don't really get to have a good understanding of regular expressions as you would in such a project. And
Correct.
and
Yeah.
now from where you sit, and it's good we covered this, we started off with the two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Where you sit in your job as an engineering manager, if you were to be put in that role again,
Mm-hmm.
how would you do it differently?
Oh gosh. So much I would change. But I think most importantly, is just having the team structure, what I'd say. At least being able to have a team to deliver on software, because software is not, it's not this is engineering, and I like to differentiate software development and software engineering. When you're building software at an engineering level, um, working with a team, working with a team of specialists, that's what you really need, especially if you have someone coming straight from university. You want to plug them into that team and have them grow, just by being paired with other specialists. So I think that's really what we've also done at Trigger. That's what I try to, the environment I try to create with my team. It's ensuring that, for instance, we're pair programming. We're getting our interns to be paired with more experienced engineers so they can learn. They can learn the ropes. They can learn how to debug an issue. They can learn how to, the best way to write clean code, for example. These are things that, yes, you have that broad knowledge, but until it comes time to apply this knowledge, it really helps to have someone who's been there and done that. And just, I find that peer learning, especially at the workplace, is really useful, and it helps to get your fresh talent delivering sooner. And that's a metric that I think,
Mm.
if you are an engineering manager in this industry, the idea should be, how quickly can I get my interns to churn out quality code? These are some of the techniques that you should definitely be thinking of.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing that the guys of 37 Signal, the guys, the authors of Basecamp, I've forgotten his name right now, but he does say, like in his book called, I think, to Rework, either Rework or one of his books anyway, he says that the true mark of success of a company is that a fresh hire can push code to production on day one. Like your
Correct.
documentation is that good. Your systems are that robust. In fact, you tell them, break the system.
Mm-hmm.
Break this. If they can break the system, then they have added value because they have found something that the rest of the team hadn't thought about. or they can push code to production means they could understand the documentation. So I like that point. I really like that point. Now, just to finish up on Hashi,
Mhm.
what did you learn about yourself that you can share with us? I'm sure there are many things you learned about yourself, some of which are not
Mhm.
shareable. But what did you learn about yourself from the Hashi experience?
It was good in the sense that I learned what I don't want.
What
So
you
I
do
learned
want?
I learned what I want. Exactly. I learned
Ah,
the direction in technology that I'd like to head in. And my resolve was cemented there, really. It was deciding that from that experience, I know exactly what I'd like to do. I'd like to write software, I'd like to write really good code, and I'd like an environment that I can do this in. And that then informed my decisions for where next I could go.
okay, great. So if you're listening to us and you're listening to From Campus to Career, and we're listening to the story of Sam Lungati and how he's now at the point where he's telling us about Hashi and how Hashi, as an experience, a company, great company. We are not, anything bad about the company. Every company has got different jobs and different people will find those different jobs either suitable or unsuitable for them. And for Sami, the thing he learned about himself was the fact that he just for him software was the way. Like yes, there are many roads, but for me the software road is the one I want to take. And that's then how you moved. So now you moved into Strathmore.
Yeah,
Um, Tell us a little bit about Strathmore. Like what were you hired for? And what do you end up doing?
great. So the official title was Java developer and system administrator
Okay.
and Linux system administrator. And I liked it because it was more than just your Java programming. There was an element of managing your server, managing the environment in which you are going to deploy your system, which I thought was really cool. I really liked Linux. I was really keen on building my Linux skills as well, and I felt that mix of programming and Linux server administration was fantastic.
Okay. So that's what you're hired for. What do you end up doing?
And that's exactly what I ended up doing.
Oh,
So
cool.
I managed the AMS. It's called the Academic Management System. So yeah, building software, building features on top of the AMS, custom features. It's a big university. I think at the time maybe about 5,000 students, and so there's a constant need for features to be added onto this enterprise platform. So that's what I do. I generate reports. I think it was an Oracle database at the time. So yeah, generating reports from the Oracle DB, writing features in Java, and maintaining the system, the Linux server system that it all ran on top of.
Okay, okay, that's really cool. At least there was some harmony and some concordance between what you were hired for and what you ended up doing. Um, and so that those are the two things. And then what did you learn about yourself? No, no, tell us about the working experience then, like as in, and I'm not trying to look for any holes, but in terms of what was what was that you because you mentioned things like the teamwork that you discovered were important. Tell us a little bit more about that situation. Like, did you follow any disciplines? Was it discipline led, like Scrum or some form of Agile, or was it by team? You met in the chapel every morning and you said a couple of Hail Marys, or like, what was the structure like?
Interesting. So yeah, we had a lead developer, that call him that. Then just the rest of the developers. So it was the IT department, and we were in the software division, if you like. But a small division, just the three of us really. We had a lead developer, and I worked on the AMS. I had another colleague who worked on the financial system, and really we just I think every morning we would meet up, discuss the features that are required, discuss implementation, and really just get to work. I think because we were so closely tied to the user, there was always work to do in terms of feature requests. So an important thing there was just ensuring you have some kind of buffer, ensuring that you're not overwhelmed by all of these requests coming in from users. So just a way of managing requests, managing expectations, really. That's another skill that's really important. Being able to manage customers, being able to manage vendors, being able to communicate timelines. Really good skills that I learned even from there, even from Strathmore. Yeah, so I'd say just receiving requests, spending time working on them. At that particular point, Agile wasn't, we didn't really have an approach, if I may call it, agile way of working per se. It was really just ensuring that your critical features, you could call it like a matrix of sorts, where we were ensuring that the system is up and running. We're maintaining uptime on this system because it was a critical system for the university. So at least ensuring that it's running, then now being able to balance that requirement with software adding features to the platform, generating reports, just being able to manage all of these different aspects was a good skill that I picked from there.
Okay, so you mentioned this was before the days of Agile and any of these disciplines. I'm wondering, was this also before the time where we had widespread use of like like source control management? Or were you
No,
using
we had a repository. It wasn't Git. I doubt it was Git.
SVN?
Probably SVN, correct? So yes, we of course we manage our software in that sense, pushing commits and merging requests, that kind of thing. That existed even back then.
Okay, now you mentioned something, you really emphasized how this was a critical system for the university, but you're coming from an environment, Hashi, where you had been doing everything. And in which case you may not have had the opportunity to develop competence, but now in an environment where it's obvious this system is critical, and if this system fails, it can completely interfere with the smooth running of the whole university. So the first question I'd ask with relation to that is what did you how did that sort of reverence about the system, not in some wholly religious or dogmatic way, but just in terms of we have to be very careful around these systems and maintaining integrity.
Mhm.
And then, like, how did you grow in that experience of the tension or anxiety around working on a live system? And maybe was your system set up in such a way that you maybe had multiple, not really instances, but multiple stages of your development? Like, did you have like a development server where you could make mistakes, and then you had a staging server where you would push changes and test them for production, and then a production server where you now push changes from like like okay, take us through that story of your growth in terms of
Mhm.
handling now being the adult in the room.
Great. So one of the things I appreciate from that environment was just seeing all of first being exposed to very high quality code. So I'd read through the commits, and you can see that a lot of thought was put into this feature and ensuring that it's properly tested before being deployed. So yeah, like you're saying, we did have a separation of environments where we could develop on one system and then have like a sort of pipeline to have that deployed into production. Um, and that builds confidence because you're able to make your mistakes on your dev cluster, if you like, uh, sort out any issues, thoroughly test your features before you deploy to production. So I guess just being exposed to that and then building your confidence around writing code and pushing production code and then seeing people use your features was encouraging enough that I was then able to work on bigger, more demanding features. But yes, being in an environment where I'm seeing good quality code, and there are these quality gates, if you like, that ensure that if you make a mistake, first you can revert those changes. So there's a way out, sort of. It's not that you burn the house down. There's systems in place that ensure that quality gets to production. Everything else is caught before that.
I really like that because for two things. One is it shows that this whole thing about imposter syndrome and how people feel like I think I have been extended beyond my capability. And yet, if a job has been designed, there are people who've put in place the processes and procedures. And when you join a team, your job is just to learn them and grow in confidence. That's just number one. Like nobody joins a job where they know everything from the first day. So that's number one. But the second lesson I hear from you is the value of method or methodology, having a systematic way of doing things such that it's not about me, it's about our method. Is our method good enough that it catches when I make an error? Because I will make errors. And when I make an error, what are the steps to go through? And that again, I think is important because it builds confidence that even if you make errors, and you will make errors, that they like the team has your back. Like the way it's been structured, they have your back. Does that
Yeah.
does that resonate with you?
Definitely, definitely. And I think to add on to one of your previous questions on what I would do differently, I would have an engineering manager because those are the things that an engineering manager puts in place. Those systems and processes and procedures, that's the work of an engineering manager to ensure that everyone is producing at 100%. And even if you make a mistake, because we are human and we make mistakes, even if you do make the mistakes that that the systems that catch that eventuality and you're able to roll things back or you're able to pull a previous working version. That's the work of an engineering manager. Yeah.
Interesting that you should point that out. And I'm just wondering, like now, I don't know if there's anyone who's listening to this who is maybe they've been given a really senior role in a company, but it's a really small company, and the company is skimping on IT. They're not investing adequately. Like, what would you say to a company that's not taking the IT seriously and they haven't hired the appropriate skills, like an engineering manager or the right number of levels? Like, what would you say to such an organization? Like, is are they playing with fire? Like, what advice would you give them with regards to making sure that they have the right rules in place, staffed by the right people who can then bring on board into the organization the right sort of processes and practices and things like that?
Yeah, good question. I think I'd say um, they've been recently we've had a couple of incidences in tech where we've had organizations have their data leaking, for instance, even here in Kenya. And I'd say the evidence is in the pudding. The results will show. The bad quality, the poor quality will show. We'll hear about it on the news. We'll see it in the papers, and we'll know that okay, these people probably aren't as serious as we thought they were. So it's a serious reputational risk for such organizations not to have these roles in place. They're risking the reputation of their businesses, if not the departments, even the reputation of their business at large.
Okay, cool. I like that point. I really like that because, like, there is value in being professional. And that's really the one of the key underlying things behind Site Pro. Like in my own experience, I worked for many years working in Python, and to the point that I thought I can solve virtually any problem with Python. That's what I thought until I was hired as a software developer, and I realized I didn't know anything. Like I had to really go back to the drawing board. And that was a good opportunity for me to now sort of develop the professional skills. And I don't even feel like I've reached the pinnacle of what that could be. But the bottom line here is professional skills are professional skills for a reason. When you go to a surgeon, you're not going to someone who's read about surgery. You're going to someone who's done surgery and they've done it to the point that they have experience. Because there are a lot of nuances that are only learned by experience. They are not part of the textbooks. They can never be covered as part of the textbooks. Just to wind up now
Yeah.
on Strathmore. So so you're hired for a certain role. You actually did that role. Um, so two questions. One is, What did you learn about yourself at Strathmore, working in an IT department? So now you're in a job where you're doing software, okay? So we know that you're on the road, right path. Now, eventually you move to Angani and Node Africa, which to me seem like deviations from the path in line of what you said. But I'm really curious,
Mhm.
what did you learn about yourself? And maybe that is what illuminated your path into Angani and Node Africa. But tell us, like, what did you learn about yourself at Strathmore?
Sure, sure. I learned that I loved Linux. I loved everything to do with Linux. I was eager to get my hands deep into that environment, and that really informed my decision to then apply for the role at Angani. Angani at that
Ah,
particular point were looking for a DevOps engineer, and I thought I really like Linux. I really like knowing the back end of the system. So yeah, I know the software. That's fun, but I'm curious about what happens when I deploy the software. Where does the software go? How does the software interact with all the other elements in these systems? And so yeah, that informed my next decision. I saw the job at Angani and I applied, and yeah, that moved me into DevOps.
well, that's fascinating because it means you got into this role with no clue about Linux. I mean, of course, you'd worked with Linux, but you had no clue that Linux could be such a draw on your soul. And I guess the lesson, and again, we're coming back to our theme here from campus to career. So you've done a degree in nursing, okay? And yeah, you enjoyed what you studied, you had good lecturers. But what I'm thinking about is that we think of careers like a road that has turns. And with a road which has got a lot of turns to the left and to the right and maybe up and down, you can only see so far. And they may come a turn in the road where you realize, oh my goodness, I didn't know that this was behind this road. And I guess that is what happened for you. You went into it as wanting to be a software developer, all of a sudden realizing, oh, there's something else here that I never got exposed to it as much, but now that I've been exposed to it in this working environment, I now realize, wow, this is a new calling on my life. Would that resonate with you?
Definitely, yeah. I enjoyed every bit of interacting with the servers. I was intrigued about what happens once a request comes in and goes out into the internet. What are the next steps? What are the systems between my enterprise software and the internet? And I was curious enough to try and figure that out. And thankfully, at that time, that opportunity came. Angani was just setting up the first, I think, public cloud uh, provider. Well, let me not say public cloud provider, but they were the first internet startup that I knew about operating from Nairobi, and I thought that was a awesome experience, like, opportunity to understand how the internet works.
Okay, cool. So now you've added a little cherry to the story because what you're saying there is Angani was different because unlike Hashi and Strathmore, Angani was a startup,
Mm,
which
correct.
means it's very likely what you were hired for and what you did were very, very different. That's the nature of startups.
Correct. Very different, but also very targeted in the sense that I wasn't all over the place as much as the Hashi experience. But as DevOps, it was you 1 minute you're building. I think what I liked about the Angani experience was you're responsible for building the software and you're responsible for deploying the software. So you get to experience development in its entirety. You get to experience the full life cycle. I like to call it the full life cycle, not in the sense of in the sense of how your software works, um, how your software will work with the internet, for example. You get
Mhm.
to write the code, deploy the code, see the code running, tweak it for and optimize it to perform better, see the traffic that's coming in and out, and make decisions based on that, which I thought was really cool. I was exposed to a lot of different systems.
Okay. So, but that's interesting. I would have thought that you are not doing any development, but it said you did do development. at Angani.
Correct, right? You think that at that point, DevOps meant that you were purely deploying or working with getting these software binaries to production, but it was everything. It was all encompassing. It was writing a code, being good enough to write the code. So maybe in that sense, that's why it was a startup, because um, you'd expect that I'd purely be working on the DevOps side of things, but because it's a startup, you will write the code, you will then deploy your code to production, and you will then manage and monitor that system. That was the
Okay.
experience there.
Okay,
Yeah,
then is that what you ended up doing? Like, so it was so that there was harmony between what you were hired for and what you did.
true. That was my expectation, that I would still be coding to a degree, but I would be doing more of the seeing what's happening behind, seeing what's happening with the systems,
Okay.
and that's what I was exposed to.
What were you coding in?
At the time, we were coding in many, I think mostly Java, I believe, Java and Ember.js, I believe, for some front-end apps. Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of now team dynamics, like were you working on your own? Were you isolated from others, or did you have teams? Did you have mentors, or was it a point now you began to mentor other people?
So at this point, I was still, I wouldn't call it a junior role, but I worked under the CTO. We had that sort of setup where we had the CTO and then sort of like a flat setup, CTO, and then just the rest of us developers. But in that sense, we were still being mentored, especially because this things had changed. I'm no longer just working on one system. Now I'm working on multiple cloud systems. There's a lot to learn, and I think that mentorship was really key to helping me understand how everything was pieced together.
So, what value do you feel that the mentorship added to your career trajectory, your career progression?
I can't understate. No, it's critical. I think if you're getting into any career, just having someone who's been there, done that, has the knowledge uh, in that particular field, can help direct you in terms of what to do, where to go, in terms of your career next steps. It was really critical for me also. Just seeing the skills, seeing someone who's really knowledgeable and being able to just glean some information and try and figure out how to get things done. I think that was really critical in helping me understand how to work in this role, how to deliver in this role.
Okay. And what did you learn about yourself in this role?
I learned that I knew very little. I think um, at Strathmore, for example, I felt like you feel like you know a lot of things. You're working on one big system, fine. It's an enterprise system, fine, and it's on a server, and you think you know a lot until you're exposed to the internet and you're exposed to a whole lot of other uh, more bigger systems, if you like. So I learned that I had a lot to learn, and it was a really good environment to be exposed to a lot.
But that's a really good position to be in. It's like discovering how deep your pockets are. And you realize, okay, so I thought my pockets are so shallow, but now, oh, they are so deep, so I can put so much in my pockets. It's always a
True.
good thing to realize that you still have a lot to learn, as opposed to feeling like you're at the peak and you know everything, and therefore you stop learning, and that's usually a fatal flaw.
That's true.
So, okay, so here you are in an environment where that you're learning a lot, and you can really see there's a big delta between your knowledge and maybe the CTO's knowledge. But what I'm curious about now is, okay, those seem like the kind of things that will keep you in that job for years. What drew
Mhm.
you away?
Interesting. And this story, I think it's known in the ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, if you like. But unfortunately, at that particular point, there was a bit of management issues beyond even me that then caused some sort of rift, if you like. Um, and I found that it didn't really feel like a good space to continue working at. And so when the CTO left and formed his own company, I decided, you know what, I've learned a lot from this guy, and I'd like to continue learning from him. So I moved to the company that he was forming, and that was now North Africa.
Okay, so this was sort of like a schism, like you. Okay, then. So that's an interesting scenario. So it's not really that. So you are not really drawn out. Well, I would say you are drawn out, but you are drawn away because of your thirst to learn and the
Correct. True.
confidence you had in what you had learned from this CTO and wanting to maintain that upward trajectory in learning.
Correct. Actually, funny
Okay.
story. Uh, so the CTO was also at some point a developer at Strathmore, and so I could see his Git commits on this AMS, and I remember thinking at a point, this is some really quality code, and so when I learned that this same gentleman was at Angani, it was like a no-brainer. Like I want to learn
Oh
what
wow.
he knows. Yeah,
Again,
interesting coincidence.
that's a and this is one of the things I have I've really mentioned a lot of times in the previous from campus to career sessions. And it's something that it's not original. I didn't generate it, but it came from a guy called Daniel Priestley. So Daniel Priestley is Australian entrepreneur who is he runs an incubator in London, and he runs a company called Dent Global. And he's written a couple of really accessible books, very good books. And in one of his books called The Entrepreneur Revolution, he says, despite what you think, that one of the things that's going to feature majorly in your life is luck. Luck is surprisingly, one of those things that you can't plan for luck, but you can't do without luck. Isn't that strange?
True. Very
So
strange. And I
here
think
you are, you're
all
working
you
in
can
an
do is be
environment.
ready. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you're working in an environment where you can see the code and you're like, wow, this is really good code. And then it turns out that that guy is hiring someone. Like you could just say, I have been working on the same code. I don't know how you worded it, but I would definitely try and exploit that. But luck is so
Yeah.
important. But it only works when you're out in the field and you're active and you're engaged. Okay, so we are now trying to wind this up. I know we've covered a lot of ground. It's been really, really valuable. I don't know if you've been surprised at some of the things that have come out of this conversation. I have been.
It's been
Now
good, man. I
you're
really liked it. Yeah.
now you're in Node Africa.
Yeah.
You're part of this schism, um,
Mhm.
and so Node Africa has this guy was now the CEO or he was the CTO.
He was the technical CTO. Yeah.
Okay,
Chief
and
technical. Yeah.
so what were you hired for, and what did you actually do?
Okay. So now at Node Africa, the official role was cloud systems engineer. Yeah, a bit of a change from DevOps. I like the title. I think it spoke to what I did. I was um, interesting. When I think about it, you could almost think it's like a sales engineer, if you like, but because it's a startup, again, you are um, responsible for deploying systems. Technically, you could think of it as configuration management. Majority of the work was you're provisioning servers, you're provisioning um, the PABX systems, voice over IP systems for clients. You are the back end and the front end. I remember one instance where I had to uh, deploy Asterix. Asterix is the software that we use for voice over IP. And with a client, I think it was Diane Blair at the time, and I was responsible for going to site and integrating our system with their systems, or really just setting them up for voice over IP or SIP, if you like, which was really cool. And I liked the exposure, being able to work with Asterix, being able to solve problems for users, being able to uh, get deployed as a resource, go offsite, um, and set up a solution that then provides value to our customer. That felt really cool. It felt like I'm this knowledgeable guy who's getting into Ubers. At the time, it was, I think, Motogari. Motogari, I think, was a taxi service at the time. So I'm getting into the Motogari and being deployed to customer sites to bring solution, to bring really needed solutions, much needed solutions, and that was really, really cool.
So this is interesting because what I'm hearing you say is two things. One, that your confidence began to grow.
True.
The fact that you were given responsibility, your confidence began to grow. And then the flip side is just that what I've said, that you began to get more and more responsibility.
Correct.
So as you got
Yeah.
more responsibility, you got more confidence. And as you got more confidence, you got more responsibility. So
True.
tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was the first time someone said, we'll send an engineer? And poor Sammy is the one who's been sent and is like, woe unto me. Like, will I be able to fix this? Will I be able to do this?
Yeah.
Tell us that story. Like the palpitations, the sweaty palms. Tell us what that felt like.
Okay.
I'm
Cool.
sure you
Cool.
remember
So,
it.
I think mostly of that instance at Diane Blair, where so we have this service. It's our managed service, if you like. We're offering it to a customer as a sort of plug and play into their systems. Um, and so yeah, I'm I walk in and I think initially we walked in because again this was a startup, so of course you're there with almost the entire team. You have your sales
So you went as a
person, you have
whole,
your
you went as
CTO.
a whole group, like
But
you're
you
going to
you go
get
as a
bride
whole
price.
crew, correct, to try and negotiate and sort of just understand the environment. Then subsequently visits were now where I was
Ah.
primarily just the one going
Did you go with the
deliver the
CTO, the
system.
first one?
No, no, I was by myself, which was interesting. But of course,
Okay. No, but when you
he was
went
on
with sales,
standby back in the office. Yeah, oh, yeah. When we went to sales, yeah, I think the CTO. I think we were all there. It was such a small team. I think we were just maybe five individuals.
oh, you left one person in
So
the office.
maybe just one person remained in the office. True. So yeah, we'd go and we'd see the environment and then now come back later and then deploy the systems. I think that we were two cloud engineers at the time, so that was our responsibility. You work on the system, then you go and you sell it and deploy it on the customer's servers or site. Yeah, which was cool.
Okay. So let me also
Yeah.
enjoy the flip side. Like, was there a time where your confidence, you've heard of Dunning-Kruger syndrome, the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is when you gain more confidence than you have knowledge.
Hmm.
So what happens is usually your confidence is less than your knowledge.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes,
therefore,
yes.
yes, you can do something, but your confidence, and at some point, you end up with equal confidence and knowledge. But then the problem is confidence continues to grow. So
True, true, true. So
you get
thankfully,
to
I
a
think
point where you're,
because so you're saying because of our team setup, it was really you could fall back on the if you made a mistake or you got a bit too confident, you could just turn back and say, okay, there's an issue here. I remember one instance where I was in the data center, and again I was deployed by myself. So yes, the confidence has increased and the responsibility has increased. And then I think I was sent to rack up some new servers. So this was the role. It was everything because it's a startup again. But I think some of the best experiences to learn are from startups. So on one side, I'm deploying this VoIP system, but on the other side, I'm racking up some servers. So I'm at the East Africa data centers, and I'm racking up some servers, and and yes, so we had this rack, dedicated rack, and unfortunately, as we were racking up the servers, one of the guys who worked for for the data center touched I think the power button on one of the servers that was already racked, and that brought some couple of seconds downtime, which was just crazy. But now those are the things that happen, unfortunately. But thankfully, we had some systems in place to quickly uh,
cover.
spread the load and get
Um,
systems back up and running. But yeah,
wow.
having experience, but it helps work in a team. Helps work in a team so that you can fall back on. Yeah.
So that brings you very nicely to the point. So now you're in a job where you have a proper title, you're being given responsibility, your confidence is growing, yes, your confidence is, you're trying still to calibrate your confidence to be matched to your knowledge,
Mhm.
but you're beginning to have a handle, sort of like you're getting the reins on what it takes to make your career meaningful and impactful.
Mhm.
Because you can now see the effect of being responsible and being given that responsibility and taking that responsibility carefully, and then sometimes overdoing it and messing up, and then the tension, anxiety of trying to roll things back, and you don't get any nasty phone calls, but it's a close shave. But you're sort of teetering on this path between you're just starting out and finding your feet, but also trying to also stretch yourself. So now we're getting to the point that you're getting ready for your current role, and we're going to now make that transition. But I'd like to, I know that I'm confident, very confident, that there's a day in your job at Node
Mhm.
that you one day you woke up and you realized, I've got this.
Mhm.
Like, I think I know where this is going.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you tell us about that realization? What did it mean to you? And then how did it make this switch towards your current job at Twiga?
Mhm. Okay, good point. Um, so I think so first I was at Node for about 3 years. And I think just that exposure every day to challenges and and then solutions to those challenges. Yes, it helped build my confidence and eventually I was the one being relied on to resolve issues, to maintain the servers and maintain the uptime and hmm, how how that it felt really good. It felt like I knew something. It felt like now I was people could depend on me to accomplish something, which is it's a really good feeling. And uh, yeah, so now I could do more. I could be deployed by myself. I could go to customer sites and they could rely on me to get the job done. And that's a really good feeling for yeah for anyone in their career.
Okay, so I guess that's your answer to also your answer to the question of what did you learn about yourself? That you are capable, you are a useful member
Correct.
of society, you do add
I'm useful.
value.
Yeah,
Um,
add value, and you can see the value. You can see the value at the customer site. You can see them go from I didn't have this solution to now I have the solution and I have this solution because of you. And that's really powerful. Being able to, now we're talking impact. Now you're talking, your work now has impact on other people. And that's a really eye-opening experience to have, knowing that this thing I did contributed to something positive on the customer side. That's really awesome.
so now I have a question for you. So I want to turn this thing back to you. So all along we've talked about mentorship. And in your first job, you didn't have a mentor. You are all on your own, thrown into the deep end, and you struggled and struggled until you found your way to the edge of the pool. And you said, "Hey, no, not again. This one is too tough." Then you got into
Yeah.
Strathmore, and here you are with two mentors. One was an invisible mentor of the CTO who ended up, at Angani and then eventually Node. But second was the person who was you were working with, who was like your leader. And these two
Correct.
individuals mentored you either directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
And then you get into Angani, you work with this CTO, and this CTO just shows you another level that there's more that you can accomplish. And you follow this guy, you say, you're like Peter who says you have the words of eternal life. So you follow this guy into North Africa.
Yeah.
But now I want to turn back to because so you've said very well that you're now at a point where you people trust you, people depend upon you.
Mhm.
But I guess it also gets to the point that now people are calling you for solutions.
Mhm.
Late at night, a server is down. Who do we call? We call Sami. Okay.
Mhm. That's true. Yeah.
Tell me about mentorship. Did you, at this point, feel like you could mentor? Did you mentor? And if
Yeah.
you did, like, what was, And it may not have been formal mentorship, like you didn't have this designation as a mentor, but you now realized that there are people who depend on me for their knowledge and for ensuring that the service is delivered with the professionalism and reliability that it requires.
Mhm.
Tell us a bit
So
about
yes,
your perspective now, mentorship.
great. So yeah, I actually ended up mentoring a couple of people. We had some interns who joined us um, later in that in the 3 years that I spent at North Africa, and I was able to just show them the ropes, show them how I debug or how I set up systems, how I set up servers and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, and then it was awesome. I think just being able to help someone grow, and I see that a lot in my current role, being able to get someone from point zero to a place where they're giving as much impact as I am. That's really awesome. I think that's something that we should all aim towards. It's getting people who didn't know as much as you, and then now giving them the knowledge you have, directly or indirectly. Like I like the point you raised about the indirect mentorship I got from this CTO just by seeing his code and seeing that quality and saying, I'd like to do the same thing. So I think that's the role we have, especially if we've been in our careers for a long time. That's what we should be giving back is holding the hand of the next person behind us and allowing them to grow into the role that we are currently in or roles that we held before. Yeah.
And I like what you've said. Like it's really powerful that if you do a good job, then that job speaks for itself. Like with the CTO's code, like that was a signal to you, that there was a certain direction to follow.
Sure.
That's powerful. Like it's non-trivial. And I think it's something very important for young people to learn that you really have to put your best effort in whatever you do. No half-hearted jobs. Because someone down the line, you could actually alter someone's career trajectory by the quality of work you do. I
Correct.
think it's very, very, very important. Even if nobody's watching, even if nobody ends up
Mm-hmm.
using your work, there's a story told about when they designed the first Macintosh, like the team that did the Macintosh, they all signed. There's something that they signed, and that was now inside the body of the whatever of the
Mm-hmm.
monitor or the system itself, and nobody would see that, but it mattered to them that that was there because for them it was the value wasn't in just in the product and how that product would be used. The value to them was
Mm-hmm.
also the process of doing it. I think it's something that a lot of young people don't take very seriously. That it's not just about getting things done. It's also about how you get things done. I think we talked about methodology early on, that the value of methodology. I think that's what you highlighted in something you said earlier. So
True.
the
And before
sort
you
of
move on,
yes, go on.
I was just going to say some of my referrals, even to date, are from the good job I did before. At some point, people knew me as a server guy, just because of my experience at Node and deploying all these systems at all these places. And so that good work that you do, like you're saying, it pays back. Um, in that people will remember your work, remember the good work you did, and who knows that even future jobs could come just from that, just being able to do a really good job where you currently
Great.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. So here's the question probably everyone has been waiting for. So then, what drew you from Node to Twiga?
Okay, interesting. So yeah, startup life is tough, and I think at some point the finances that unfortunately at Node just they weren't adding up. And at this particular point, I'm a family guy. I think I had my first daughter coming, getting born, and now the finances needed to make sense. And
Mm,
at that particular point, I knew that I'd learned enough, and that it meant more for me to for my work to earn me enough to to feed my family because it's really important to be able to put food on the table.
Mm.
And so at that particular point, it was a no-brainer. The startup wasn't performing very well, and I figured, let me find out what else is out there in the market. And so I scanned around and I saw that Trigger were hiring, and I figured, you know what, let me try that Trigger, see how things go there.
Okay, so what were you hired at Twiga for, and what did you do?
So I joined as a software developer. Full
Right at the
circle,
bottom
went
of
straight
the.
back to right at the bottom of the chain. True, but I think it was a really good experience or opportunity to learn the systems from the ground up, to learn by contributing, to learn by writing the code uh, that then was used, yeah, in all these things that we worked on. So um, yeah, software engineer, that was my role. I joined, I think, as a software engineer in the supply chain team. And yeah, straight out of the gate, we were writing code for a bunch of different um, use cases. But now at Twiga, what I really appreciated was the processes that they had in place. That was my first uh, exposure to Agile and Agile as a way of working. And even terms like ways of working. Now, here we had ways of working. You know, that you don't just work anyhow. We have ways of
Mhm.
working. We have sprints. We have retros. And all of a sudden, it wasn't so much. So I think at some point I had a sort of like an imposter syndrome. You're right to point that out, just in terms of writing code and the expectations to write the code. But here, that was all broken down because, again, of the systems that they had in place. So you break down this really big problem, this really big project into manageable chunks or sprints, and then you can commit to working on this chunk of this huge project over this time duration. 2 weeks for us was the standard sprint, and then at the end of that sprint, let's see what you have, and then let's build from there. And that was really a really wonderful introduction to modern software development, if you like, and the systems that allow you at any level to begin to contribute and to contribute quality and to grow as a developer. And I loved it.
Okay, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Um, and what is the size of the team at the time? Like, and did you have, was there now a new mentorship opportunity? Like, were you being mentored?
Okay, so it is a really big team. I think when I joined, we could have been 40 upwards. So we have different functions. A function for supply chain, another for the sales, another for ops. We had entire operations, DevOps teams there. So a much bigger scale. Yes, I had a manager, a line manager that I reported to. Uh, and I guess this was an opportunity to learn to write software using this new way of working that was I really looked forward to. And it really allowed me it to separate the imposter syndrome and to see and to leverage off of this way of working. So I just need to chunk this really big problem into smaller chunks and accomplish this day by day by day. And before you know it, you have massive systems that you've built just by breaking these really big problems into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay. So, and I'm curious about your, like the first time you encountered Agile. I have mixed feelings about Agile. I don't disagree with Agile. I think maybe there are certain things, maybe Agile has certain places, but that's a story for another day. But I do remember my first exposure to Agile, and it's it's clear intention to bring about some discipline and structure
Correct.
and
Yeah.
methodology, and that all those are very worthwhile, pursuits. But I'm just curious, like, what was your first exposure to Agile, and like, how did you react to Agile? Or did you feel like, ooh, what is this? This is strange. It sounds like almost like a religion. Or did you feel like, oh, finally, someone is speaking something that I've always wanted to hear, or something else? Like,
It,
what was your reaction?
sure. It was like a breath of fresh air.
Oh,
I
wow.
think all of my interactions with software before that were the kind where you have this really big project you've been assigned. Now go off and in 1 month come back with something that's working. And half of the time that really doesn't work. Half of the time you'll be 3 weeks in, and that's now when you're kicking things up. You're like, oh my gosh, I have a week to go and I need to get this stuff done. But the discipline that came with Agile was fantastic. It was let's get this starting now. In 2 weeks, let's show what we have, and we can just use this really just primarily as a project management tool, but a tool that allows you to communicate expectations. Now all of a sudden there's less fear in terms of this massive behemoth that's waiting for you at the end of a month. Now it's I'll use this agile, I'll use this sprint to communicate to my customer, to communicate to my execs, for example, that this task will take me 2 days. This is the complexity. I can even rate it for you and show you just how complex it is to perform this particular task. And now these tasks put together will will equal the delivery of this system. So it's a fantastic tool to communicate to the rest of the team. Just how long will it take for you to accomplish task X? And I love that it yeah, just as a means of communicating to the rest of the organization. This is how long it will take me to get this work done, and have them respect that timeline and be able to contribute it iteratively and improve and on a system. It was really just a breath of fresh air.
That's very interesting because, and I really like that because what I'm beginning to hear,
Mhm.
these are the whisperings I'm hearing underneath that okay, in your first job at Hashi, what you discovered was you wanted to be a software engineer. But what you're telling us now is that there's much more to being a software engineer than the software engineering itself, than the coding itself, because you're now talking about processes and practices and
Correct.
interactions and collaborations with other people, which are served by this methodology. In other words,
True.
there is more to software engineering than the practical task of writing the code and deploying it. And that there is,
100%.
yes, that seems to be, it's like, and if that is true, then it means that even when one thinks that they have arrived, they find that there's another floor above. And
Mm,
there's always like, yes, I feel like I understand. And the big mistake would be to say I've arrived. But the right thing to do is check. Maybe there's a staircase somewhere that takes you higher. And then lo and behold, oh, there's another staircase. Okay, what is on this floor? Oh,
mm.
you know what I mean?
True, 100%. Yeah. And yes, so I came in as a software engineer, and you think, okay, initially I was almost a level below the CTO, but now I've gone to a software engineer. But just because of the processes, it was such a fantastic place to work, and and I was exposed to so much. And I think these processes they go a long way, and they really do help people to begin to contribute. So we can't understate just how important it is to have these processes in place.
So one thing we haven't touched about throughout this whole process, and I want to touch on it very respectfully. We are coming to the end of this whole conversation, but I'd like to touch on something which is sensitive. But don't worry, I won't trap you. I'll talk about it in very generic terms. Conflict.
Mm.
What is the role of conflict in building one's career, in moving from campus to career? Like, what role does conflict play in shaping you to be who you are as a professional?
Good question. And I'm trying to think of examples where I have had conflicts.
And by conflict,
Um,
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the kind that you say, okay, let's go outside and sort this out like men. But conflict where people disagree with you, either openly or subtly, where you are passed over for promotion, where someone, rejects your push-pull request. there are all these little subtle things that happen,
Mhm,
uh,
mhm, mhm.
but they're important because they provoke a response from you. And that response, it could be the right response, or you could be enraged and tell the CTO, to go and hang himself with his shoelaces.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Any sort of reaction. But each of those
Yeah.
exposes something about your
Mm.
character.
Okay, good point. I see it almost in degrees where maybe at the top of that scale is conflict, and maybe at the bottom it's feedback. And I think we, we should all be open to feedback. Like you're saying, I've committed some code and I've received some comments that maybe um, some people are not so happy with maybe the direction my code is going in. Um, those cases will come, or maybe you've delayed with a particular deliverable and it's taking time, and yeah, you may have some back and forth with your manager, and you are right in mentioning that it's how you handle these situations because they will arise. You will have conflict with team members, maybe in terms of the direction that a product or a feature should go. You'll have conflicts maybe with your managers in terms of timelines. You'll have some back and forth in terms of how quickly you should deliver a piece of work. Those that will happen in your career. And I think, uh, like you rightly alluded, it's how you respond. It's how you respond to all of these challenges. They will be there. There will be many of them. I think it's just at the end of the day, it's just being able to communicate. I think first, it's really most importantly, it's communication. It's really just falling back on your communication skills and being able to communicate um, really your feelings, really. Because at the end of the day, we're humans and we do have feelings. And yes, when we are slighted or when we feel a certain kind of way, it really helps to be able to say that, just openly say it. And we've had, as an engineer manager, part of my role is to ensure that we have such sessions. Even in our retros, we have an opportunity to just to see how things are going. We're human. We have these feelings. We have these emotions. You are late on a particular feature. How are things? Is everything okay? It's important to know that conflict will arise and there need to be avenues to resolve.
Mm.
If I butt heads with a fellow engineer about a particular issue, um, it helps to have the environment to resolve. But I think mostly it's just falling back to communication, being able to communicate and have um, still systems, still processes. And I think I'm grateful that even at a place like Trigger, we had such processes where if we have conflict, um, mostly it was in this framework of a sprint where we're able to communicate because it's tied to your deliverable. It's tied to are you getting work done? What's stopping you from getting work done? Let's find out what's happening. But I think mostly just being able to communicate what's happening with you is important. And it's important because you'll be working in a team. And it's important for your voice to be heard and for your issues to be resolved. So I think for anyone listening, it's just fall back to your communication skills. Um, it helps to be able to uh, escalate things to your manager in the event that maybe things cannot be resolved. Stay with your teammates or your colleagues. It helps to have those systems in place where you're able to send feedback up and have these issues resolved.
Wow, that is really deep and really valuable because I know the whole process of, and I'm sure like your job at Hashi, you probably had a lot of conflict because it was just so many expectations on you, so many expectations of yourself, and but for you to now have that perspective, that's a perspective that's born from being embedded in the marketplace. There's value
True,
of being embedded in the marketplace. It's not something that we get into the marketplace with. We learn it painfully,
true.
and it's really great to hear how your career has really that trajectory of you being deliberate, having luck, being having your eyes open, and then just growing through your different experiences and the impact you've had on your work. So I I know I said we take 30 to 45 minutes. It's been more than an hour and 20 minutes. It's probably an hour and a half now. Because I've really enjoyed talking to you, and
Oh,
you know
nice.
what?
I've
I've
enjoyed it
just
too.
I've just scratched the surface because
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you about, further studies and other things.
Mhm.
And I think we'll have to put that for another day. But I just want to say thank you
Sure.
so much. This has been so precious. I've really, really appreciated this. And we should organize another one for another time.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been really good. And I hope whoever's listening, I hope there's some gems or two that they can pick and just a point to encourage them that even as they're starting out, it may be tough, but like we've said, just get in there and try and figure things while you're in the system. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so thank you everyone for listening in, and I hope you learned something from this. I did learn a lot. Like as you could see from the questions I was asking, I was really engaging with trying to draw the lines between. And I hope that was valuable to you. So join us for another one next time. We're going to have I'll put out the roster again of the next talks that are coming up. But until next time, thank you very much and bye bye.